Everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our Return to Work Employment Seminar Series, Engaging Peer Mentors in Your Stay at Work and Return to Work Processes. I am Kimberly Wickert, and thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. There is closed captioning available, and if you would like to turn off the live transcripts, you can do so on your desktop or laptop at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions as we are going through today, please type those in the Q&A and we will answer those for you as we go along. We have a lot of great content in a very short time, and I'm fortunate enough today to have our humble resident expert, because he'll tell you he's not an expert, but I feel he is, Jason Jones, in our peer mentoring. And he is our resident expert at the Human Development Institute, as well as on the Retain program. And he has a lot of great content that he's going to share with us today. So with that, I am going to turn it over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Kimberly. I really appreciate this opportunity. I want to personally thank all of you for giving up 30 minutes of your lunch. We're going to cover a lot of content over the next little bit. I just want to let you know that the chat is being monitored in case you have any questions. Again, thank you very much for joining us. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to engage peer mentors in your stay at work and return to work processes. This is a very near and dear subject to me, as I am a person with a spinal cord injury and have been in a chair for about 30 plus years at this point, and have used peer mentoring for myself and have been a peer mentor in many situations since that time. So today our objectives, we're going to learn a little bit about the benefits of peer mentoring. Kimberly has said that we're going to try to get a lot of information to you all. So real quickly, the objectives: learn the benefits of peer mentoring, learn strategies to incorporate peer mentoring in your stay at work and return to work processes, and how to access, retain peer mentoring expertise in those same efforts. Okay. Kimberly, do you have something to add? I just saw you unmuted.
I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so my origin story. I call it my origin story because I have a young son who's 10 years old and is big into the comic book and superhero world. And he talks about the origin stories all the time. These are some great pictures here of me as a child and as a teenager. The one in the suit I take much ridicule about. And so that's why I put it on there, just to have a little bit of fun. But I was injured in high school, in the high jump in high school, right at the end of my sophomore year. I was 15, about six weeks before turning 16. And that was April 21st, 1990. And as I always say, this presentation, those are dates you never forget, right? So I spent about 2 weeks in intensive care, 30 days in the hospital, about 4 months of rehabilitation. After that, went on to graduate with my class, went to college at Georgetown at EKU, and then earned a degree in mass communications, where I entered the workforce. Okay, so these are my parents who just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary this week, and I put a picture up there of them because they treated me no differently after I got injured than they did before. The expectations were there, and I think way too often we lower our expectations for people, and it gives them the sense that there's not as much as expected of them, or that we don't think that they're as capable as they once were. My parents were really wonderful about trying to give me that encouragement, giving me the opportunity to fail at times, and always being there to help pick me back up. So, and as it has really given me strength over the years to try to be as helpful to other people as I have, because of the example they set. So I'd like to give them a little nod. Okay. So the story continues. This is me and my wife, Jessica, on the right. We've been married now for about 14 years. And this is Bryce on the left and Mike on the right. Mike's the older one. He just turned 13 this week. So everybody say a few prayers for the next 4 to 5 years in our existence and in our household. And then we'll course, then have two teenagers at some point pretty soon. Just show this picture again to say that people with disabilities can live a normal life, as normal, whatever that definition is. But just to have the ability to function in society, have a good quality of life, have a family life, all those good things, that's not exclusive to people who do not have a disability. So that's why I like to show it. Okay. So employment after injury. So I was reporter for the Lexington Herald Leader for a while, editor of the Commonwealth Journal in Somerset for a while, director of community relations at OVR for 15 plus years, and a disability specialist now at the Human Development Institute. And I would say at every level here in these jobs, the different jobs I've had over the years, I've had someone that was sort of kind of a person that sort of helped pick me up and talk me through things and those kind of things, which is has always been a very beneficial relationship in all of my employment opportunities. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about peer mentoring. Okay. So peer mentoring is a form of mentorship that usually takes place between a person who has lived through a specific experience, the peer mentor, and a person who is new to that experience, the peer mentee. And I would even take this one step further. Peer mentoring does not have to end because someone is no longer someone experiencing a new, something new. These relationships can last for a long time. The important thing to remember, and you'll hear me say it several times over the next 15 to 20 minutes, is that this is a two-way street relationship. If it's not a two-way street relationship, it's probably not going to benefit either side. And I think I've seen it over and over again. If you're just listening and not speaking, or if you're just speaking and not listening, and both sides are just kind of there because they're putting in the hours, or they're needing to go through a process, or someone's telling them they have to do it, it's not going to be near as beneficial as it could be. Putting people together in the right way is hugely beneficial to the long-term effect and completing your long-term goals in that peer mentoring relationship. So this is my mentor. This is Tom Gravitt. He was patient relations coordinator at Cardinal Hospital for many years. A lot of people know Tom. He was the guy that taught me to fight. He was the guy that taught me when not to fight. He was the guy that was kind of there to say, hey, this is why that hurts, and this is why you feel this way, and that kind of stuff. And we taught each other a lot of things over the years. I was in rehab shortly after my accident at Cardinal Hill, and Tom came rolling through, and we started a conversation with me saying, hey, man, what happened to you? And him giving me that answer, and then he kind of became my friend and my psychologist and a lot of things for me. Tom, this picture at the top is of my wedding day when Tom was a part of that. So one of the things that is important is that we discovered early on that we had a lot of the same interests. We both enjoyed talking about horses and horse racing and that kind of stuff, and in football, and he would say women, because women was a big topic he really enjoyed talking about, and wanted to press his advice to me as often as possible. And ironically, I introduced him to his wife, who he was married to for many years before. Unfortunately, Tom passed away about 6 years ago now, and we really miss Tom. But another really important point is that we were the same level of injury. He was just a little bit lower than I am, and we lived similar lifestyles. But Tom, I've said a million times, my father was always there for me and ready to lend a hand whenever I needed something. But he couldn't answer the questions that Tom could, and he knew that. So Tom was always that been there, done that kind of personality that really helped me get through many years. And I have to give Tom a lot of the credit for the person I am today. But what's the philosophy behind mentoring, right? So sharing through conversation, right? So mentoring is a gift that is shared. It is a relationship that enables purposeful conversation. And purposeful is an important word here. We need to make sure that the conversations that we have can be very organic, but that there's kind of a reason behind them, right? So the conversation assists the mentee to reflect on their own experience, make informed decisions, and act upon the ideas that are generated. Okay? And you get a lot of that, right, from talking to someone who's been there, done that. Okay? So it needs to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And this is the second time I'm going to mention this, and you'll hear it several times again. So the purpose of mentoring is development. Okay, it's about learning, not teaching. And both mentors are those mentored and those mentored grow from the experience. So both sides, right, need to develop sort of a synergistic relationship and through that conversation. And it allows you to do things like set goals and make decisions and solve problems, because sometimes the problems seem really huge until you really get into a conversation with someone who's kind of been through it, seen the pitfalls and figured out how to avoid them. And in that situation, it can become a lot less significant than you thought it was when it first started happening. So any person who has the skill to facilitate the mentoring process may be a mentor. Mentoring can mean a lot of things. In a relationship where a disability is involved, a lot of times it's helpful if both people have a disability, right? You have a bit of credibility that you probably would not have if you were trying to give me advice and you weren't rolling in my chair or walking in my shoes or whatever cliche you want to use in that situation. Well, there are many ways to mentor. Okay, so there's informal, right? Conversations that happen by chance or by arrangement. Okay, and that means there's not a lot of structure to that, right? It's a hey man, you know where you're going to be in today around 3 o'clock. You mind if I give you a call? It's that first time when I met Tom and he rolled up in the therapy room and we just developed the conversation, then moved on to something else. But don't underestimate the power of informal mentoring just because of the word informal. It gives you the idea that it's not really structure doesn't lead to anything significant. I would argue that out of all of these, informal may be the most beneficial to both parties. And of course, there's formal. You know, when there's a structured program, we did at the Kentucky Congress on Spinal Cord Injury. We are very big on peer mentoring, and we try to match people up with people who are around the same age, around the same level of injury, around the same years since their injury is always really good if you're looking for a peer mentor relationship that's going to last for a long period of time. And we do that in a formal process. So peer mentoring, where two colleagues mentor each other, okay, where people are kind of on the same level, or a new employee with an existing employee who's been there and done that. So reverse mentoring, executives mentored by non-executives. Okay, Kimberly, did you want to talk about that now?
Sure. I one of the things that really jumped out at me when you first shared this slide with me, Jason, was from an employer perspective. Right now, it is such a competitive workforce. Employers are, trying to recruit and retain those valued employees. And the feedback that I've heard from many human resource professionals is that oftentimes there's hesitance at the frontline supervisor level to either keep that person at work or bring them back to work after they've had an illness or an injury. And it really struck me that all of these strategies are great for an employer to have in their toolkit, but the peer mentoring, I think, is great to think about, because if you have a supervisor who has brought someone back or kept someone after they've had an illness or injury, they can mentor another supervisor through that process. And the other thing is the reverse mentoring. So maybe you have an employee who was able to successfully stay at or return to work following an illness or injury. They can help do that reverse mentoring with that supervisor or other executives within your organization to really give a different perspective and maybe some really, fresh ideas and energy to how that can occur. So I just wanted to kind of add that here for anyone who is an employer or works with employers to think about that in their employer toolkit.
And this is a great way, because this slide really shows you that there's no really one way to develop these programs or these relationships. There are many good ways. Some of the other ones here, group mentoring, where you have one person who's kind of comfortable in that mentor relationship that can meet with several people, or the mentoring roundtables, where people sit and have a group, conversation, where everybody's kind of on the equal, the same equal footing. Or mentoring circles, facilitated group, each person mentors one person and is mentored by another, almost like a speed dating idea, right? But mastermind mentoring and business coaching And usually that's sort of a paid position that people do as a job. So just remember that there's no really one size fits all. Depending on the way the structure of your organization, the kind of things you do. When I was at OVR, they had a great counselor mentoring program where new counselors that were coming on board, even though they had the knowledge of school and the education that they'd received. It's a lot different when you start applying it to that everyday caseload. And it really helped, I think, a lot of our new employees to be mentored by those that have been there and done that for 10, 15, 20 years in some cases. So it was very beneficial. And again, it also gave a fresh perspective to the person who had volunteered to be the mentor. They'll go back and think about what it was like at the start of their career. And so often when we do jobs for a long period of time, we sort of get hardened or sort of just in the process, and seeing somebody that's excited about the process can kind of rejuvenate us in some ways as well. Let me get a drink real quick. Okay. So again, we're going to say it again, a mutually beneficial relationship. For those keeping count, I think that's 3 or 4 times. All right. So I love this. I'm looking for a mentor who can show me how to get rich without boring me with a lot of advice. All right. And I like this slide because this kind of gets to the point of you have to be a little open on both sides. All right. So a mentor-mentee pairing requires work, and it does require a little bit of work, right? Commitment and follow through on both sides if it's going to succeed. All right. You need to have a plan. So what aptitudes should we demonstrate to make sure that the mentoring is effective and has lasting value? So we're going to go through a couple of those now. All right. So first, an ability and willingness to communicate what you know. All right. If you're a closed off person who doesn't like talking about your life experiences, you are probably not going to be a great peer mentor, right? You're not good. If the person on the other end is having to draw out of you all the time, trying to ask questions to pull out information, right? You're probably not going to be a very effective mentor. All right. So it goes without saying that as a mentor, you're regarded as an expert in your field or area of responsibility. Okay. And Kimberly said that, when she first started, that I don't like to be called an expert. And in this situation, what you're talking about is that just that right, that you've experienced it, that you've lived it, and that makes you an expert in whatever that question is coming across from the other person. Going back to the OVR relationship, I would say a counselor that's been on the job for 10, 15, 20 years is going to be an expert on rehab counseling in the Voc Rehab system, right? It's going to be hard not to be, all right? But remember but it's one thing to know what you're doing, it's entirely another to be able to clearly explain what you know and be willing to take the time to do it. That's where the work comes in. Being clear when you communicate the lessons you've learned or the strategies or guidance you're offering is essential, as is your level of desire to communicate the intricate details in a way that makes sense and that your mentee can understand and learn from. Okay, being an effective communicator involves understanding language and being able to portray what you're trying to say in a way that's understandable to the person that you're trying to get the message through to. Okay. So be ready. Okay. Number 2, preparedness. So, being a mentor means making an important, serious commitment to someone. All right. And that's availability, right? It means that when you're going to have a conversation with someone, that you're kind of prepared for it. That you're kind of, and preparedness doesn't mean that you need to know what's coming. It just means that you kind of need to be in a good frame of mind. It needs to be kind of that you're aware of sort of the person on the other end of that call or that other end of the table or wherever you're meeting someone or talking to them. And you just need to kind of try to understand sort of where they're coming from, right? And be open. I mean, being prepared is so important when you're developing these relationships. This says, but you should ask your mentee what topics or subject he or she wants to talk about before the conversation. Like, hey, man, we're meeting on Wednesday. Is there anything that's happened, over the last couple of weeks or anything you might want to, talk about specifically? And that way it gives you a little time to sort of prep for it. When Tom and I would talk over the years, sometimes it was just a conversation in the middle of the day when something came up. But sometimes it was like, hey, I'm having surgery at the end of March, and this is really bothering me, something I'm kind of worried about, which gave him a little time to prep for that. And later in life, we sort of reversed roles a little bit as he aged a little bit too. Okay. I'll have a plan ready. So approachability, availability, and the ability to listen. Okay. If you're a mentor and 50 out of the 60 minutes that you are together, you're talking, you're not an effective mentor. You're just not, right? You need to be approachable, like we talked about before, be available when you can be, and listen, right? So we're all hurry up and make it happen, right? That's kind of the world we live in now. So it's important to be prepared to make the most of the time you've got when you are with your mentee, all right? Because you're not necessarily going to get a whole lot of time with any person. So you owe that to him or her, to the process and to yourself. And once these time parameters established, you must keep your commitments wholeheartedly and be ready to listen well. If you're somebody that's canceling meetings all the time, you lose credibility. You just do, right? If I've always heard 90% of life is showing up. If you're not showing up, you're not really doing anything. Okay, so be open-minded, listen well, and provide counseling advice where it's needed. Okay, and sometimes I think in these relationships we too quickly want to tell somebody, this is what you should do, when sometimes just listening is really what they need. I've had several calls over the years from people where I really knew in the first 10 minutes there was not a lot I could do about it. But I also understood in that situation that after 30 or so minutes of listening to them, that's really what they needed to do. They needed to unload. And I'm somebody who deals with, some mornings things are just rough, and I understand, and I over the years have just needed to get it out. And you don't want to do that with your family all the time, right? Because they live with you every day and go through the same things too. So it's nice to have that person who will just listen to you on the other end. Okay. So honesty with diplomacy. All right. Be honest, but be diplomatic. Don't shove something down somebody's throat. Try to be as nice as you can be, and make sure that give and take relationship is in place. And also, don't beat around the bush in offering your constructive feedback, good and bad. You have credibility when someone knows that you will be honest with them. Okay? Be honest, be diplomatic.
Jason, I think this is another area that you and I talked about. And one of my favorite supervisors used to say, it's only a really good friend or mentor that'll tell you you have bad breath. And I think this slide really speaks to that, right? And I so respected him and worked with him very early on in my career, and still think of him and how he, provided me with support as a mentor. So I think it's coming from a good place, even though it may be feedback that you don't necessarily want to hear at that time. It's coming from someone who respects you and has your best interest in mind.
Yeah, I think sometimes we think honesty can be brutal, but I think honesty is caring. Sometimes just the ability to say what needs to be said. I think somebody on the other end goes, wow, they really didn't want to see, me go into that meeting with a booger hanging out my nose. Okay, so it's a bad example, but like someone who's honest enough to tell you that you need to make a change, and also to give you options. Right? I think sometimes we think, well, this is what you need to do, when it's really like, hey, you got a couple ways of looking at this, and you really kind of need to take the reins and sort of make this decision for yourself. But if I was in your situation, I would probably look at it this way. So, and again, empower, right? Be honest, be diplomatic, so you don't hurt feelings and damage that relationship. Because once you get in these relationships in a peer mentoring sort of way, you want to protect that relationship because it's important, right? And it should be important to you as it is to the mentee. Okay. So I love this cartoon. Your advice is very important to me, so I wrote down exactly what I want you to say. Okay. So make sure you don't go into these relationships with super expectations of what you think you're going to accomplish, and make sure that if you're the mentee, right, that you're not just having someone co-sign your BS, as I've said many times over the years. Okay. It is a two-way street. Okay. So inquisitiveness, ask the questions. Okay. Again, when you are asking questions, you are making the person feel like that you care, right, about what their answers are, right? So continual learning is essential if you plan to continue to be an effective mentor, right? Also, inquisitiveness is don't be afraid to go out in the real world and get some knowledge, right? Find out what's going on, especially if it's an issue that's important to the person that's on the other end of that conversation. Okay, so never stop learning from the mentor or from the mentee, and never stop looking for ways to be a more effective mentor. Okay, so objectivity and fairness, right? I mean, there's that's it's really almost impossible to be objective, but be as objective as you can be. All right, and be fair. Okay, remember that a mentor relationship is different from a friendship, but yes, you like your mentee and care about seeing him or her succeed, but that doesn't mean you have to have a relationship outside the process. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can be very objective. Ensure that there's no hidden agenda or ulterior motives involved in this relationship. Sometimes this is a good reason that we don't try to pair up people that are of the opposite sex, or that where there may be an issue with those kinds of matters. So outside of the mentor-mentee relationship, you don't owe your mentee any favors, and he or she doesn't owe you anything except his or her thanks. Okay, doing it for the right reasons to keep out of trouble. Okay, let's get through this quick. Compassion and genuineness. Okay, that speaks for itself. All right, care about what you're doing and be honest, be genuine. Because if you're not, they'll smell it in about 10 seconds. Okay. So, what is the peer mentor role? So, as the peer mentor for Retain, offer mentoring as a stay at work or return to work support. This is kind of what we do, and this is the process that you can use in your own. So why should anyone talk to a peer mentor, right? Because if you're talking to me, I know disability. I'm not an expert, but I have years and experience. I'm here to listen and take a little and talk a little. I know how it helped me, as I portrayed already. I've seen the process work greatly with other people who have disabilities, and I've also seen it fail and what doesn't work, right? So that's the kind of things that I could help you with, or an effective mentor could. I generally care about people and how we function in society. Okay. So it's peer mentoring the first line of defense. It should be part of a larger support system. Okay. And it takes one to know one, right? And I could never learn as much from someone who is standing in front of me. I need to get down on their level, right? And I need to know that they share some same experience. Credibility is key in the situation, even if completely informal. All right. So make sure that you know what you're talking about and you're doing a good job of portraying that information. If I'm all there is, success will be difficult. All right. It kind of goes back to peer mentoring, and it needs to be part of a larger sort of support system. All right. And so unfortunately, sometimes outcomes are too easy to predict solely based on who is involved. All right. Okay. So how come peer mentors support everyone? So as the Retain coordinator, I would be here for you as well if you don't know something related to a client's disability, then ask. So that's something that the mentor, you can set your mentors up to sort of be, and it's not violating any confidentiality or those kinds of things. But if there's something that comes up and there's a question that you have, the mentor can help with that. So if I don't know, I'll ask, and so on. So mentors need to be really ready in order to be able to get information that they don't know. Expect their answers to get to the point. I get questions all the time and I care about the person asking. And so they need to know that. So let's make it bigger together for people who are in a tough spot. All right. So what do peer mentors not do? Okay. They're not there for everything. All right. They're not creating a formal program for people with a 5-step plan or life goals. They're not psychologists. The peer mentorship services needs to be organic and informal, if possible. And I would not be there to collect data regarding the provision of the service. Okay. So the evidence, this we can go through this real quick. So, a study by Gartner used statistical analysis. They concluded that mentoring has a positive impact on both people involved, producing employees who are more highly valued by the business. In this huge study, 25% of employees in the test group who took part in the company's mentoring program had a salary grade change. Okay, they were motivated, compared with 5% who did not participate. 72 of the mentees were retained. Mentoring employees were promoted 5 times more often than those not in the program, and retention rates were higher. Again, that's 72 to 69, 72 to 49% difference. Okay.
And I think this is huge too, Jason, for employers to think about from a retention perspective right now as well. If they had the 72 and 69% retention of mentees and mentors, that's great for an employer toolkit to retain valued employees at this time.
Yeah, and I think you always have to mention the fact that it gives you accountability to someone else besides your boss, right? And it also gives you an ability to sort of get around things that would maybe make you quit more prematurely than you necessarily would, just because you have someone else to say, "Hey, is this right?" or "Do you think this is wrong?" or whatever. Somebody that can kind of guide you through that. So, and the benefits are not just for the mentee. Either mentors reported improving their relation or their leadership style, gaining a better understanding of new technology. Right, that's what we talked about more with the older worker versus the younger, connecting with younger generations, having improved understanding of the dynamic lower down the organization. So just understanding more about how other people do their jobs is really important for both people. So for mentees, the key benefits are gaining valuable career advice, of course, improving access to training, support, encouragement, advice, and guidance for people who've once been in the same position. All right. So mentor can transform an ordinary coworker relationship into a mutually beneficial and meaningful bond for both parties. Meaningful relationships built in small levels all across an organization leads to a much healthier organization. Okay, we know that. So you give the ability for everybody to get together in a room with someone else at some point, talk about their day, talk about what's going on, talk about things that are coming up, talk about things they're struggling with, and you will have a much more cohesive, right, and better work environment. All right. So real quick, your ability to influence another person is directly related to how they feel about themselves in your presence. If you have ever heard me give a presentation, you're usually going to hear me say this. This is my philosophy for life. Just if a person feels good, if you're in a situation where you're giving someone the ability to say what they need to say and to feel like they're being validated, when they do say it, then you have much more influence on them and they will be much happier in that process. So I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly now, and thank you guys for your time. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Jason, thank you so much. And I know we're a couple minutes over, so I'll wrap it up really quickly. And just wanted to mention that Retain provides quality coordinated health and employment, stay at work and return to work services, and peer support is a huge part of that. If as an employer or a rehab professional or another organization that you would like more information about any of our services, including peer support, case management, universal design, assistive technology, we can help do that and provide those individualized services to help recruit and retain valued employees in your workforce. Go ahead to the next slide. Just a reminder that our participant criteria is someone that has a non-occupational illness or injury. They must have been employed currently or within the last 12 months. We are currently in phase 1, where the criteria is the individual needs to work, live, or receive health care in one of the 14 counties that surround Fayette and Jefferson County, so Louisville and Lexington. In phase 2 in October, the criteria will be that the individual is a resident of Kentucky. And then lastly, that they've not applied for receiving federal disability benefits, including SSDI or SSI. And on the next slide, we have some additional information where you can make the referral at 859-562-3251 or email us at retain@uky.edu or visit our website at kyretain.org. And we also have our Retain Kentucky Media link on YouTube, and the link is here, which will have today's recording as well as our all of our Implement Seminar series going back to June and May. And we just really like to thank you, Jason. In the spirit of the Olympics, you get the gold medal for the content and in a concise amount of time. So thank you for that. I encourage anybody to reach out if you have any questions or if we can help you develop your peer mentoring program in your employer toolkit. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.